go! Here we go! Here we go!
We're going to have a fiery Sterling today.
Well, no, you just have a big old air horn, and anytime a Packers fan tries to talk, you just hit the button and drown them out. Like, no, I can't hear you. Go Bears.
It's basically the la 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 la.
Yeah, exactly. Right? You don't even have to live there. You can do it from here. Just remote control everything. Yeah, I'm pissed off, man. Fuck the NFL at this point.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the OneIQ Football Talk Podcast. I'm Brendan, and for Sterling, how's everyone doing this week? We're officially into the heart of the offseason. Currently, the NFL Combine is in day number 3, so, day 1 was basically the edge rushers and the linemen with some linebackers. Day number 2 was the secondary and tight ends, and now day number 3 we have the running backs, quarterbacks, and wide receivers, with the running backs currently starting. But first off, how you doing on this Saturday, my good friend?
I'm doing all right as long as I don't look outside. It is bloody disgusting here. I don't like it, but other than that, I'm good. Got some good stuff. We've been doing some good content this week. I was feeling under the weather, so I was home a little bit more, so we were able to do a couple of things and play around with some stuff. So I'm doing all right.
Yeah, and we're in this part of the year where it's kind of sad because we're just left with no more football to watch. Then the combine comes back, so you get that little bit of an itch scratch. We have the USFL coming relatively soon. I think it's first week in March or next week. I don't know. It's soon. I think it might be next weekend that officially starts. So we'll have a little bit of football to kind of take a look at and actually watch. It's not going to be as good as the NFL, but you know what? We'll take it. Football is football. But we're getting so close to free agency. That's going to start up next week, and a lot of important decisions are going to be made. Obviously, we were off last week due to some unplanned circumstances, but it is.
They were unplanned, but at the same time, as with years past, we will have off weeks during the off season just to sort of let some more news build up. That way we can, bring you guys more information instead of just having a little dinky 15-minute show with nothing going on. So
exactly.
We'll have those brief hiatus throughout the off season where we'll have a week, 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks where we just don't have any news to bring us in, so we just won't be here.
Yeah, and as much fun as us sitting down and going speculation of like, I think this is gonna happen, and then you going, no, I think this is gonna happen. As much fun as that sounds, it's
we just end up running around and around in circles.
Exactly.
The autism takes over, and we just repeat and repeat and repeat.
Yeah, and then, we start talking about other dumb things, and, we already have a new podcast for that on the channel for just dumb conversations and dumb stuff, which episode 2 should be recorded potentially tomorrow, which should be fun. But yeah, going into the NFL world, obviously, the combine, a lot of stuff happens, a lot of players get released, a lot of players get kind of their contracts negotiated around this time. I know if you're going to see off-season trades, this is kind of one of the biggest spots that you see teams talk about that. Last year, we saw the Carolina Panthers and the Chicago Bears really discuss this trade majority of the time at the Combine. And, shortly, I think it was the Friday after the Combine last year of when the Bears made that trade with the Panthers. Now, the Bears also have the number 1 pick this year, and there's been a lot of speculation. Are they going to keep it? Are they going to trade Justin Fields? Well, the speculation that came out today is that the Bears should be announcing a trade for Justin Fields to the Atlanta Falcons either within the day or, pretty much shortly after the Combine. They're just finalizing some details in that, which pretty much ultimately is going to decide, or it's pretty much the writings on the wall where it's like, hello, Mr. Caleb Williams. And he spoke this week twice. once before the combine in more of a sit down like press interview. It didn't actually happen live, but it was all of his words and that type of stuff. And he said, you know what, I'd be more than happy to go to the Chicago Bears. I would be ecstatic. They have a great fan base, great team right now. And when he actually did his press interview, his podium interview, people were asking, he's like, how would you not, as the first overall pick, want to go to a team that was 7-10? And they have the first overall pick. Like that that type of stuff just simply does not happen. It is without a doubt the best opportunity a number 1 overall pick has gone to. Because you'll
Oh,
see
hands
teams
down.
trade up and do that, but the like no first overall pick has gone to a team that has had this type of record or improved the way that they did over last year.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's the best possible situation for all parties involved, and honestly, Justin Fields included. There's been so much talk around Justin Fields over the last few weeks and months. The writing's been on the wall. We knew he was on his way out. Caleb Williams has to be the next guy. And myself, I'm excited for Justin Fields. I feel like he's at a point in his career where he needed that change of scenery. I liken this situation to that of similar guys like Kirk Cousins and Drew Brees, who were with originally Washington and the Chargers. And we don't remember their time with those teams. It was when they moved on to be it Kirk Cousins with Minnesota or Drew Brees going to New Orleans, where their careers really started to take off and they saw so much success. And I think we're going to see that with Justin Fields. We know right now, as you pointed out, that Atlanta Falcons are hands down the front runners, as they have been. I know there's still been talks that the Raiders and the Steelers were sort of in the mix, respectively, as the 2 and 3 option in case things fall through with Atlanta. But ultimately, I feel like Atlanta is going to be able to offer more. I looked at this as a Steelers fan, and I was going, I'd love to get Fields. It would be great for him to come in and have that surge be with Pittsburgh, but I'm not willing to sell the future for that. I was looking at it going, if we can get him for a second round pick combined with a future draft pick in the second, third, fourth round, and maybe a player that we're looking to offload to make some cap space, which, I've got some guys that we'll talk about a little later that I think Pittsburgh might have to move on from, either releasing or trading to make some of that cap space up. But that was sort of the only way I was willing to bring Justin Fields in. I didn't want to give up that first round pick. I don't want to give up a star player in order to make that exchange. And I just feel like Atlanta's in a better situation where they're going to be able to do that.
Yeah, and the entire Chicago Bears fan base, it has pretty much been whether you are on this side and Justin Fields truthers, or you're on this side and you're the Caleb Williams fans. And it's pretty much been, it's almost been like a political debate where it's like, oh, you're a Democrat or a Republican. You can't kind of look at certain things. But with this entire thing, like a lot of the Justin Fields stands out there look at the guys like myself who have been calling for Caleb Williams since about November, and it's been like, oh, like you're giving up on Fields, you're giving up on Fields. I'm like, guys, if we had the second overall pick in this year's draft, it
Hmm.
wouldn't even be a discussion. It wouldn't be, oh, we're going to be taking Drake May or we're going to be taking Jaden Daniels. It's going to be, we're going to trade back and we're going to acquire draft assets. It's only because Caleb Williams is that guy. I don't want to see Justin Fields go. I love him. He is without a doubt the most exciting and the best quarterback as a Chicago Bears fan that I have been able to see over my 26 years of life.
Hmm.
And there has not been a lot of good coming out of that program when it comes to quarterbacks for the Chicago Bears. Caleb Williams, however, he is that guy. He is that dog. And, you just watch him play, and people always point to the Notre Dame game that you watched him play. And, he had the 3 first half interceptions. USC was bad, man. Like that team itself was just fucking terrible. You're watching him play and he's literally going, I literally have to try anything and everything just to hope to get just something here for our team to go. And he didn't play a great first half. You watch the second half, you're like, man, this is a lot better. And
Yep.
You saw that on tape so much this year of just continuous, just like excellent play, just with bad teams around him. And when you're not a powerhouse school, for instance, or you're not necessarily a great team, just having a star quarterback isn't just going to be enough to get you over the hump.
No, exactly. And I mean, Caleb Williams is that guy. He's been projected as the number one for well over a year now.
Two
We knew
years.
this was going, exactly. We knew this was coming. And for Chicago, you're looking at Justin Fields versus Caleb Williams, and you go, okay, well, yes, Fields, we know what we have, and sure, we might continue to make those baby steps and get a little better each year. But with Caleb Williams, you not only have a better quality in quarterback that could create a big leap for you, but you then also reset that contract clock. Justin Fields, you have to accept that option coming up, and then you're going to have to pay him big money within the next 2 years. Whereas Caleb Williams, you're resetting that, and you've got 4 to 5 years where you can evaluate this and go, okay, yeah, we made the right decision, or oops, we bungled it and we got to sort of reset again, which happens to teams all over. Unfortunately, it's just there's such a big spotlight on the Bears because it is such a big sporting city. They're always under the spotlight. It's one of those big cities that their fans, their citizens, they always are big on the sports teams, and they're always riding them and want them to be better and better each year. And so it's a tough market to run a franchise in, and especially with the Bears, how long they've had this limbo of quarterbacks where it's just they've been limping from one guy to the next, where he'll come in, he'll look good, and then he starts to backslide. And so this it just makes so much logical sense for the Bears to move on from Fields. And even I think the Bears fans who are calling for Caleb Williams, they're not calling for the downfall of Justin Fields. They, like yourself, you love Justin Fields. You want to see him go somewhere else and succeed, as long as that success doesn't come at the cost of the Chicago Bears. Is ultimately what it's going to be. As long as it's not Falcons Bears in the NFC Championship and Justin Fields beats you, then it's going to be heartbreak. But that's a couple years down the road to look at. Wherever Justin Fields lands, I still, as I said earlier, I think he's going to have great success. I think he's going to be the next quarterback in this line of guys who just didn't quite mesh with the team that drafted him, and he's going to move on to a new scene, new philosophy, and he's going to be able to just spread his wings and do great things with wherever he lands.
I think for Fields, it's one of those things where I don't necessarily think it wasn't that he just didn't mesh well. I just think ultimately the timing for him with Chicago was just quite possibly the worst timing that he could have come into, where it was a general manager and a head coach just trying to go out there and say, we're trying to save our job with this kid. Like, we're going to draft him, we're going to do this, and then ultimately everyone knew that that team really wasn't designed to do anything of note, and especially if, you tried to rush Justin Fields, or for instance, Matt Nagy had no idea what he was doing, and so of course that happened. And then you have a general manager in Ryan Poles come in and say, listen, this team is not going to amount to anything, we are tearing it down. He did that. We got the first overall pick, we got great value, we got great picks from that, we got Justin Fields a weapon in DJ Moore, top 6 in the NFL for receiving yards this year. That's not something to, just up your nose at. That's a massive thing to get. And, you're watching Justin Fields play this year, and it's like, okay, was there some coaching mistakes? Of course. Of course there was. Luke Getsy was a fucking idiot. But, you're also seeing things when he was playing this year of just that progression. It just wasn't coming as much. He would be slow on the reads, and he would be gun shy to pull the trigger. It almost like he was nervous to potentially throw an interception. And granted, I don't want my quarterback to throw interceptions. I would much rather have you be more protective of the football. But I don't want you to be nervous to throw because you're worried about throwing an interception. I look at Josh Allen, for instance. I've talked a lot of shit about Josh Allen. The one thing that you look at when you watch him that I love about him is that he has no fear whenever he's throwing the ball. It's no matter what, I can do whatever I need to do. Does he make terrible reads? All the time, but he has that confidence to rip it. And you see with Fields, he just doesn't have that confidence time in, time out. And, whether that's because there isn't enough weapons on the team, which I agree with. I think if you added, another wide receiver and you added some more depth on the running or in the running back and on the offensive line and added maybe a couple more receivers, not just one, but like a top end guy and some more depth, of course he's going to be better. But if you do that same thing with Caleb Williams, it's going to be even better.
Well, and I think a big part of the problem was he didn't have the confidence because he really felt like half the fan base and most of the management team didn't have the confidence in him either last year. That was the tough thing is most of the year, as you said, from November on, really, everybody was calling for Caleb Williams. They're like, okay, we want Caleb Williams. And at that point, I feel like Justin Fields sort of just resigned himself to the fact that this was the end of his days in Chicago. And he's like, okay, well, it becomes about self-preservation when he came back from that injury, as opposed to let's get to the playoffs, and that's not necessarily the right mindset to have. But at the same time, I don't fault the guy in having that, and when I said he didn't mesh, wasn't him. It was that the organization was just shuffling and shifting so much through his
It was in a bad spot.
Exactly. Like you said, he was drafted by guys that were trying to save their jobs, failed to do so, which meant new guys come in, and all of a sudden Justin Fields is like, oh, okay, well, these guys don't want me. I'm not their pick, I'm not their guy, and they're really starting to show that as the success wasn't coming, and they go, okay, once the Caleb Williams train started, he sort of went, okay, I'm going somewhere else. And I think that's what we'll see, is he's going to go somewhere that very obviously wants him. The fan base will want him. The ownership group will want him. The management group will want him because they are sending value to get him there.
Yeah.
And so I think that will be a great boost for his confidence. And if he can go somewhere like Atlanta or Pittsburgh that has offensive weapons that he can utilize, especially a running game in Bijan Robinson, Najee Harris, or even with the Raiders, Josh Jacobs, if he's still there, those are great options because that will take some of the pressure off him and let him be looser and grow and expand his game.
Yeah, and for me, I still think that if we still had the second overall pick or the third overall pick, it'd be a no-brainer. It'd be like, okay, it's Justin Fields,
100%.
Nobody else, and we just continue because he is overflowing with the stuff bucket. But the thing is, you look at him and you go, can he be a top 15 quarterback in this league? Yeah. Can he be a top 10? Everyone immediately starts to go, like
if he's in the right situation, it becomes situational then.
Well, even then, it's one of those things. Just the things that you've seen on tape with, just going like, okay, like can he get those reads up quicker? Because that's one of the hardest things to teach is to going through your progressions as your reads and then be quick on the trigger. Justin Fields can go from 1, 2, 3 to 4 and back down to his check back or check down player, but by the time he does that, he's either running for his life or he's, getting sacked or he's throwing the ball away. And it just needs to be a quicker process. It needs to be a quicker processing system, and I don't necessarily think that's going to change for a team like Atlanta. He's still going to have some of those deficiencies, but like, is he going to be put in a situation of where he's going to be good? I'm going to root for him the entire time.
Oh, yeah.
This year, I was rooting against the Carolina Panthers every single week. It was like, fuck the Panthers, fuck their organization, fuck their fans, for no other reason other than we had their first round pick and I wanted the best opportunity. I wanted an extra top 10 pick because I wanted 2 top 10s. I did not think we were ever going to get the first overall pick. After trade deadline, I was sitting back going like, we might get the first overall pick, so it's even more, fuck you guys, lose.
Yeah.
And then they did it. But like, if Justin Fields goes to Atlanta or Pittsburgh or anywhere else, I'm going to root for him because I want to see him succeed because he is such a good guy and he's such a great human being to the point you're just like, you can't root against him.
No, exactly. And I mean, the thing for me too is it comes back to, we've had this discussion. I think we had it a couple years ago when Justin Fields was first coming in, and my non-belief in Ohio State quarterbacks. And we're seeing why. with Justin Fields. This is a thing. Ohio State is such a run first school where the quarterbacks are usually taught read one, read two, and then
Throw
run,
the ball.
pitch, something like that, you know? And so often we see the quarterbacks coming from there and they do have trouble making those further reads through a play into the 3, the 4 without panicking in the pocket. And so that was always my concern with any Ohio State quarterback and Justin Fields when he was coming in. And I know you were like, no, he'll be great. And he is great. It's just that is the spot that he is struggling. And it's making those reads and being calm and collected in the pocket beyond that first read.
Yeah, and for Ohio State quarterbacks, again, you and I have always had differing opinions on it. Like C.J. Stroud last year, it was very much a situation where I was like, he's the best quarterback in this draft, and there's no doubt about it. And you're like, I don't know about this Bryce Young guy. And so, well, you and I often went back on debates with that. But it is kind of one of those things where you got to really make sure that when you look at the athletes, like the Lamar Jacksons, the Justin Fields, the Kyler Murrays, what you're really hoping for is you want to see that athleticism, because that's the way that the NFL is now. If you are not an athletic quarterback, you are not going to survive in the NFL, i.e. Mac Jones. You see him, the dude can't run to save his life, and it's a problem. You have to be able to threaten defenses with your legs. But you also need to look at it and go, we need to make sure that when that athleticism is starting to go away and fail as age comes by, that you are still a good enough pocket passer to the point where it doesn't even matter. Because look at Michael Vick. Michael Vick is one of the perfect examples of where he was so dangerous and so athletic, but when that athleticism failed, he was not even an average quarterback. He was just kind of there. Like we saw him in Pittsburgh that one year after years with the Eagles, and you're like, man, like his athleticism is gone and he's just not making those plays. That's the worry with Fields. And you look at a guy like Caleb, there's countless videos of like hours of him just playing with inside the pocket, and you're like, this dude is a pocket passer. And then you see all the other magician level stuff where it's like, oh my god, but that's the athleticism as a young individual who can do that type of stuff.
Well, you even look at, arguably the best quarterback in the league right now in Patrick Mahomes. He used to be, and still is, a mobile quarterback, but he used to be a very mobile quarterback until that bad knee injury he suffered. And since then, we see him in the pocket much more often. He still will use that mobility to extend plays, but not nearly as much as we saw in his first couple of seasons. And that is a key thing, is he is able to maintain that pocket presence and move around with it and stay calm back there. And that is so vitally important. And it is what Justin Fields is sort of lacking right now.
Yeah. And, obviously the entire offseason, we're going to be talking a ton about the Bears and that pick. I thought it was funny today, obviously, when the rumor came out that the Bears and Falcons were really close. They're just trying to finalize some details on some things in that trade. You immediately heard a bunch of people talking about the Commanders. Oh, they really have Drake May as their number one quarterback. That's who they are really excited about. It's like, yeah, sure you have Drake May as your number one quarterback, because that's probably the guy that you think is only going to be there. And then it's sounding like the Patriots are like, oh, we actually have Jaden Daniels as our number one quarterback. It's like, well, yeah, no shit, because that's the guy that's only going to be there for you. And, someone made a meme. It's like, oh, Minnesota actually has, J.J. McCarthy, and the Raiders have Michael Penix, and the Broncos have Bo Nix as their number one quarterback in the draft. It's just like, well, yeah, because those are the only guys going to be there for you.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of a funny read.
And I mean, that does tend to start happening as we get closer to the draft and teams start to feel like they know what the other teams ahead of them are going to pick. We see that every year where it's like, okay, well, we know Caleb Williams isn't there, so he's no longer number one on our draft board, because what's the point in wasting a spot on our draft board with a guy we know will not be there? You and I do that when we play Madden.
Yeah. Totally.
There's numerous times I'm at like pick number 9 and there's 4 guys that we know are really good, and I'm like, yeah, I don't even have them on my draft board because I know they're going to be gone by my pick. And so why am I wasting the hope and prayer that even the bad Madden logic will screw up enough to not take that, because we know they're going to be gone. And so we're reaching that point where 8 weeks out from the draft now, and teams are starting to really hone in on what their needs are and what is going to be available for them at that spot.
Yeah, speaking of that bad Madden logic, can't believe you drafted a quarterback at 6 overall.
Yeah. Go
That
watch
is,
that video. We'll see who drafted that quarterback.
yeah. Yeah, so that's what we like to call a tease in the world of this industry. But yeah, it's pretty much this draft process is only going to continue to grow and grow and grow and grow and get more information as the weeks go by. I'm hoping that this trade for Justin Fields happens today. I'm hoping that it gets announced today, just because
Yeah.
I've been saying this. Like, I want this process done, because the sooner that Fields is gone, the sooner that it's like, okay, the Bears are taking a quarterback at number 1. It's going to be Caleb Williams, and then we might as well just announce to the league at that point, like, hey, everyone, Caleb Williams is going number 1. We already have the card. We sent it to Roger Goodell. So he's going to walk up to the stage and go, Chicago Bears are on the clock. The Chicago Bears select Caleb Williams, quarterback out of University of Southern California. And just, like that should be the process. But, obviously.
No, and I agree. Just because my team is so heavily invested in this discussion, in this conversation, I also want this done sooner than later, just so I can know what's going to
what your
where the
quarterback
chips are going to
situation
fall
is going
going
to be.
forward. Exactly, and I'd like to see that too, rather than have it drag out over the next 8 weeks until the draft, because that was, before that news dropped today, that's sort of the way I've been looking at it, is like there's going to be a whole lot of speculation over the next 8 weeks until this trade happens.
Yeah, and it really is. The Chicago Bears are, whatever the Chicago Bears do is going to dictate this entire draft. Like, we always like to talk about, teams and going like, oh, they are dictating the draft. This year more than ever, the Bears really do dictate the draft, and it is so vitally important about what they do for every other team behind them, because it's going to affect teams at pick 11, 12, 13, teams at 16, teams at 20. It's going to affect a lot of stuff of what they do, and it's going to be quite interesting. But there's still a lot of time before we get to the NFL draft, and obviously we need to get through free agency before we actually go through the draft process. And I know the NFL actually added $30 million to every team's salary cap, which is the largest jump in salary cap ever in the NFL. Just absolutely insane. The Bears went from like having $60 million to upwards of 80. I think it was closer to like 56 million, and now they're up to like 86. So I know the Steelers definitely got some help out of that, because they weren't in cap hell, but they weren't in a great situation necessarily.
Well, I mean, we were above the cap before that came down, so that was welcome news for sure. The Steelers were in a position where we knew we were going to have to cut contracts, going to have to restructure some contracts as well, and so with that 38 million coming in, and then up to this point in the offseason, the Steelers have released some veteran players off the teams. I know we've released Presley Harvin, our punter. We released Chukwuma Okorafor, right tackle, who had been benched for half the season. Mitchell Trubisky has been released, and also the center Mason Cole. And so that, combined with that 30 million, that brought the Steelers under the cap by just shy of 10 million. So still not great. Still not in a position like where your Bears are, where you've got 80 million plus that you're going to be able to play around with. For Pittsburgh right now, they're looking at going, well, with that 9.8 million or whatever, we've got enough cap space to sign our draft picks, is where we're at right now. Because the draft picks this year with 7, it's projected to cost about 8.5 million to sign all 7 of those guys. And so that's going to leave us with just under 1 million remaining in cap space. And so really, free agency, it's up in the air whether the Steelers are going to be able to make any significant moves at the free agent without Omar Khan. doing some magic work with contracts or some more releases, maybe some trades. But they're going to have to do some work to free up any cap space if they want to sign any players outside of just, the draft picks.
Yeah, the Steelers currently right now are sitting with just shy under $8 million from what I am reading from CBS's numbers. But yeah,
No.
teams in the clear and utter red right now are the 49ers, the Cowboys, the Broncos, the Saints, the Chargers, the Dolphins, and the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, all that is going to have to be situated and worked out, but we know with the Saints, they essentially just like to go, we'll pay that next year, and just continue to add credit card debt. It's like that Family Guy meme, credit card debt, credit card debt. I'm not going to pay it back yet. That's essentially what the Saints do every single season, and it's not even close. But yeah, the Patriots, Commanders, and Bears are your top three teams with in terms of actual cap space that they can use. This is taking out the rookie contract factor, so your Steelers are going to have $7 million to essentially work with during free agency. That's not going to be factored in with rookie contracts coming in as well. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to say the least. I know each of us kind of had a list of players that we were looking at, whether the teams could afford them or not. So yeah, I'll let you take it away first with your Steelers.
Yeah, well, I mean, first and foremost, as I said, cap space is going to be key. Even $7 million, you're not going to be able to get any significant additions to your team, in my opinion. And so we saw Omar Khan last year make a lot of big moves. He brought in some splash players, in Isaac Swimalo, Armin Watts, a few guys that didn't really play necessarily, Patrick Peterson, who did great. But he's going to have to restructure or trade or release some of these contracts. So I expect to see a restructure for a couple of contracts, like maybe Patrick Peterson will add an extra year on that contract, restructure it so it goes to next year, because the Steelers have tons of cap space available next season. They're sitting right now at, I believe, about 120 to 130 million free space for next year. So Patrick Peterson, Cole Holcomb, possibly we could see a bit of a restructure. It wouldn't be much, but we could possibly free up $1 million. And I would not be surprised to see a couple of the bigger names even have some of that salary deferred to next year, the Minkah Fitzpatrick or even TJ Watt, and have him have a big payout next year for the, in getting close to the final years of his contract. If not restructuring, I know there's been talk of possibly seeing the Steelers trade up in the draft a little bit, and there's a few pieces that some of those teams could be willing to bring in, veteran pieces combined with that first overall pick for them to move up 5 to 7 spots. So I've got guys like Patrick Peterson again, Allen Robinson, and Larry Ogunjobi, who all are on expiring or nearly expiring contracts, more veteran presences that I could see the Steelers package to move up in the draft. And so that would be a way to free up some of that cap space as well. And I only really see them doing that if they want to move up for a specific person in the draft. And right now it sounds like the only real person in this draft that the Steelers are looking to move up for would be a cornerback out of Iowa, Cooper DeJean. There's been a lot of talks. They've met with him one-on-one several times in the offseason already. And so there is a lot of speculation there that could be a potential position. But as for free agents, our biggest position in need in Pittsburgh is that interior linebacker. It was just decimated last year with injuries from Cole Holcomb. We had Elandon Roberts who went down, Quan Alexander, all of them just suffering injury after injury.
Weren't you down to like the 7th guy on that depth chart?
We brought Miles Jack back out of retirement to play by the end of the season. Like, he played in that Buffalo game in the playoffs.
Yep.
Like, that's how decimated that linebacker core was. We discussed it, I believe, a couple weeks ago, where I think Nick Herbig, we're going to see him start to play a little bit more interior linebacker next season as well, just because he's grown quite a bit, and there's no space for him on the edge with TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. And so really getting somebody, especially a veteran, to play alongside him would be key. And so the big three that I'm looking at, if the Steelers can either afford or convince them to take a little bit less to come and wear that black and yellow would be Patrick Queen. Bringing him over from Baltimore would be a big steal because we know how important it is in that rivalry to have those sort of mind games going on. And a couple other veterans that I wouldn't object to seeing would be Levante David. He's set to be available, and Bobby Wagner as well, who in the past has expressed an interest in coming to Pittsburgh. And so possibly he'd be willing to take a little bit less just to come play in that black and gold. He'd get to play with TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith. He'd get to have a young guy like Nick Herbig take him under his wing, teach him some of the moves and the ways to play that interior position as opposed to the edge. So that would be my way of filling out that most important position. We still will have Elandon Roberts and Cole Holcomb under contract for next year, so we do still have those guys. But with the injury concerns and the fact that Elandon Roberts especially is more of an outside linebacker guy, but not an edge rusher, it's tough for him to play the interior. And so I would like to get a guy who's more comfortable playing that interior spot. And there aren't a ton of highly rated linebackers in the draft this year. I know the Pittsburgh Steelers have met with basically every middle linebacker that is coming into this draft this year. And so I'm sure at some point in the 2nd through 5th rounds, we're going to see them select up to 2 middle linebackers in this draft.
Yeah, there is a lot of linebackers that you could definitely see the Steelers go towards. Just taking a look at some of the guys that are in Jermaine Trotter Jr. We saw last year the Lions overdraft a guy in a middle linebacker for Jack Campbell, and Jermaine Trotter is definitely a very level skilled of a player of a Jack Campbell, but it's going to be a situation of like you're going to overdraft this guy because he's not worth a first round pick, but you're genuinely going to get your guy. Another guy that looks fairly good is Peyton Wilson out of NC State. He just absolutely lit up the combine when he was here, ran just a phenomenal time, just looked genuinely pretty good. Junior Colson, the linebacker out of Michigan, is also another one of those guys that's going to potentially be looked at for your Pittsburgh Steelers. But interior linebacking is going to be such a need just because, again, like when I asked, like, was it like down to 7 or 8 on your depth chart? Like, I'm kind of making a joke of like it's probably even more than that, of like, I'm gonna underestimate the number, and it's like you brought Miles Jack out of retirement where he was studying to be a plumber, just getting a trade job, that he's just like, are you sure you want to just like hold off on your plumber career just to come play some average football for us in the playoffs? And he's like, sure.
It was desperation.
It really
was. There was so many injuries, and it's funny. Like I think we talk about Madden sometimes. I've done 3 Pittsburgh Steelers franchises up to this point, and in 2 of those, Jeremiah Trotter is I do draft him at that middle linebacker position in that first draft. And I do routinely bring him in because I know that is the biggest need for this team right now. We need something up the middle. Ever since Ryan Shazier went down with that horrific injury, like, what was it, 8 years ago now? Jeez. We have not had a solid middle linebacker. We almost had it with Devin Bush, and then he got hurt and was never the same after. And it's been a constant just point of pain for the Steelers organization at a position that used to be just such a mainstay, solid spot for us. We had guys like Lawrence Timmons, Joey Porter. We had so many big names play that middle linebacker position. We need the next guy. And who knows, maybe with a veteran in there teaching Nick Herbig, maybe Herbig's the next guy. You never know.
Yeah, and I like the idea of trying to bring in Bobby Wagner. This is a guy that's clearly lost a step throughout his career, but still very effective, can get after players, can, get tackles and do all these sort of things. And, but he's not going to be able to cover tight ends as well as he once did, or rush the passer the way that he also once did. He's Bobby Wagner, but he's definitely the B- level Bobby Wagner that we have grown accustomed to. Still a very good player, but
Yeah.
if you can get him in there, and he's not going to be the main focus of this defense. It's going to be T.J. Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick, Alex Highsmith, then probably Bobby Wagner. Kind of being the focuses,
Even
and
then, I think even Joey Porter Jr. will be more of a focus above him if
maybe,
Bobby Wagner's there.
maybe,
Ultimately, that's why Patrick Queen is at the top of my list for that interior spot, because he did. I think he felt a little bit slighted when the Ravens brought in Roquan Smith and he started to sort of overshadow him. And with Patrick Queen, we know he does have that ability to both man and zone cover in that defense, which is key in shutting down tight ends in this league.
yep.
And so that would be a great help to have a guy like a Patrick Queen who can drop into coverage, allowing Nick Herbig to just sort of be a quarterback spy or an extra rusher even up the
Yeah.
middle. So
The one problem with Patrick Queen, and you and I did talk about this
Mhm.
beforehand, is the contract. Spot Track kind of said the contract was going to be like 18 to 20 million dollars. That's Roquan Smith territory. Like
Mhm.
you look at guys, for instance, like Tremaine Edmonds, who the Bears brought in last year.
Yeah.
Like their middle linebacker is not one of those positions where teams are really going to pay unless you are the special of the special. And Patrick Queen, he's a good linebacker. Do not get me wrong. One, he's one of the top 10 middle linebackers in this league, in my opinion. But the separation between him and a Roquan Smith, or for instance a Fred Warner,
Yeah.
it's just not even comparable, man. Like he isn't that level. I would say if you're gonna pay him probably 10 or
Mhm.
closer to 13 to 15 million dollars a deal, if you can get that deal done, perfect contract. But as we've
Yeah.
discussed,
But
the Steelers don't really have that, and
exactly. And that is why the issue will come into, as I prefaced, any of these guys I mentioned, they're gonna have to take a discount to be it's gonna be, oh, I really want to play for Pittsburgh. Or with the other two guys I've got on this list, it's, oh, I really want to play with Arthur Smith again, and so I'm gonna take less money to do so. And so I'll mention those guys now. There's been a lot of talks of, we need more quarterbacks in Pittsburgh. Right now, the only guy we have under contract is Kenny Pickett. There's talks that there hasn't been a lot of interest for Mason Rudolph around the league, so there is a good chance he will be coming back and re-signing with Pittsburgh because he does like being there. And if he can't get a starter job somewhere else, why is he going to go somewhere else and be a backup when he can just stay in Pittsburgh where he likes to be? Beyond that, there have been talks that possibly Ryan Tannehill would be willing and interested to come to Pittsburgh, reunite with Arthur Smith. They had a great run when they were in Tennessee together, and just be a veteran presence that can give Kenny Pickett a bit of a push and some competition for that job as well. And then aside from that, just this past week, the Atlanta Falcons did release their tight end, Jonnu Smith, who again played with Arthur Smith in both Tennessee and in Atlanta. He had his best statistical year last year in Atlanta. And while Pittsburgh really isn't in need of a tight end right now, if Jonnu Smith is willing to take significantly less than the $7 million contract that the Patriots had originally offered him before he was traded to Atlanta, like if he's willing to come in and take 2.5, 3 million, then yeah, you can be on a stellar tight end unit. You got Pat Fryermuth, you got James Washington, who or is it
Darnell Washington.
Darnell Washington? Sorry, yeah, who is a phenomenal blocker, and then Jonnu Smith there as well. That's just gonna allow you to run way more three tight end sets, and it's gonna let you move Cam Hayward back to his or Connor Hayward back to his more natural fullback position.
I was gonna say
You
Cam
know,
Hayward is definitely not moving back to the
yeah.
offense.
No, it's tough when you have so many brothers on the same team. You start mixing up their names and shit, so it's tough. But yeah, Connor Hayward, who's been playing tight end, he's more of a natural fullback. That's what he played in college, and so to be able to move him back there, you've essentially got three excellent blockers with two great receivers, maybe three if Connor Hayward can continue to improve his receiving game. Like this run game, we could get back to that old school ground and pound power offense with some play action in there to the tight ends. It it could work. But again, both Tannehill and Smith, they're going to have to be willing to
To
take
take
much
less.
less money to come in and play with Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh does not have that space unless they move on from all these guys, like I mentioned, Larry Ogunjobi, Allen Robinson. I don't see Allen Robinson still being a Steeler next year at the $11 million price tag he's at. He just did not produce last year. He didn't seem to be able to mentor George Pickens the way that everybody thought he might and be able to rein in that attitude. And so if he can't do that, then what are you doing for us?
Yeah.
And so I could see him being a bit of a trade chip for some of these teams out there to either just move on from the contract and get more trade value for Pittsburgh, or to even, as I mentioned, possibly move up in the draft a little bit.
Yeah, I think for like the Larry Ogunjobi, the Allen Robinson, and the Patrick Peterson, I think you're tough sledding to try to include those guys in a trade up, because a lot of those teams that are ahead of you are probably looking at it going like, no, we're still kind of in this area of where we're rebuilding. We don't want to take on a shitty contract with a guy that's kind of in the tail part of his career. I think for all of those guys, it's most likely going to be the cutting department of just saying, hey, we're going to take the dead money for a year and then just kind of deal with that. But
it's very likely. But I know Pittsburgh and Omar Khan. He will shop around. There's going to be options out there.
No doubt.
You're going to look at teams like Kansas City and Houston, who are in need of a wide receiver. Like looking at Allen Robinson, and they're going to go, okay, well, we could bring in Mike Evans or what's the other one I'm thinking? T. Higgins, and we're going to have to pay them more than that $11 million price tag, or we can bring in Allen Robinson, give up a 5th round pick, and boom, we've got a number 2 guy.
Potentially,
but that's just it. It's going to be a lot of negotiating and back and forth with these teams before Omar Khan finally goes, okay, you know what, nothing's working. I'm sorry, we're going to have to cut you guys. We need that cap space we can get, so we can bring in one of these more key positions we need. Because let's be real, those positions I mentioned at wide receiver and defensive end, Pittsburgh is kind of loaded at those positions right now. We don't need those extra guys on those big contracts.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Like, all those guys being moved on from, and the players that you're trying to bring in, the Ryan Tannehill, I don't see him coming in and being a starter. I definitely see him more as a guy that's coming in to just mentor Kenny Pickett as best as he possibly can. The one issue that I would have with Jonnu Smith is reuniting with Arthur Smith is hopefully you really like watching Pat Freiermuth be a decoy. Because
right.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't really do that kind of stuff when he was the OC in Tennessee, though. That was sort of
that was bad habits building when he was a head coach.
Yeah, that was something he did in Atlanta, and I think it was trying to be unique to the point where he was like, oh, maybe I'll surprise team. So I'm hoping, with him going back to that OC, he's going to get knocked down a peg. Mike Tomlin's likely going to go to him and go, look, we don't play that decoy bullshit here. We run straight at you and we punch you in the mouth in Pittsburgh. That is what we do. And so you're going to use Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth, and George Pickens, and you're going to be breaking jaws with these guys. If you use them as a decoy, I'm going to be coming over breaking your jaw. I think is what we're going to see. I don't think we're going to see that decoy game out of Arthur Smith as an OC.
Arthur Smith walking, going, how can I use Allen Robinson and Jonnu Smith and, Connor Haywood as my feature guys, and use Najee, Jalen Warren, George Pickens, Deontay, no, not Deontay.
Deontay Johnson as a decoy.
Oh, is it Deontay? Yeah, I couldn't remember his last name, and just like Pat Freiermuth, how can I use those guys as decoys with like the Mr. Burns hands?
I mean, that's the thing though. Like, there's enough talent on that Pittsburgh offense. He can still play that decoy style of game as long as you're using one of the stars as a decoy to open up another star.
Yes.
The problem in Atlanta is he had, what was it? Was it Drake London and Bijan Robinson?
Drake London, Bijan Robinson, and Kyle Pitts. Yeah.
So he was using those guys as decoys for the second stringers. Whereas in Pittsburgh, it's like, okay, I'm going to use Deontay Johnson as a decoy to get George Pickens open. Great. I'm going to use Pat Freiermuth as a decoy to get Darnell Washington open. Excellent. That works. Yep. I'm going to use Najee Harris as a decoy to get Jalen Warren open. Those will work. It's when you start getting into the guys who it's like, okay, these aren't skill, talented guys that you're trying to open up. And Jonnu Smith is a talented tight end. Like I said, he had his best statistical season last year.
Like
And so
he got a $7 million contract as a tight end for a reason. Like he's a talented guy.
exactly. And so that is my hope, is if he does still do this style of play calling, as long as you're utilizing the stars, that you're getting them open while using others as a decoy, these guys are going to work together to get that flowing. And you know what? It's still going to be an improvement over 4th and fucking 8. Let's run a jet sweep. So it's still going to be an improvement, man.
Are you saying you don't want to run 4th and 8 jet sweeps anymore?
Yeah. Do you want to run 3rd and 15 screen passes anymore? You want Luke Getsy back?
No.
Exactly. No. We both saw very similar offenses the last couple of years, and we
both saw offensive coordinators drawing up plays with crayons.
Mm-hmm.
Going
when really they should have just been eating the crayons and wearing a straitjacket.
Oh no, they were eating the crayons. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
It's just, they wrote down a play and they're like, "This is good. Num num num. I like the purple because it's tart."
Right.
Like that's what our offensive coordinators were last year. You with Matt Canada and me with Luke Getsy. And somehow the Raiders were like, "Yes, let's hire Luke Getsy." And then there's also the rumors of, let's trade for Justin Fields. And I would feel so bad for Justin Fields if he went to the Raiders with Luke Getsy.
I feel bad for Josh Jacobs being on the Raiders, because he's looking at that going, I'm not a receiving back. What do you mean you're throwing screen passes to me? Be prepared for a lot of drops and fumbles. Like, this isn't the game I play.
I am
Give me
a
the ball
smash
and let me
mouth
run up the
football.
middle.
And
Right?
he's also a free agent, so like, what's gonna happen if they lose him this offseason? I know he wants to stay with the Raiders, and a lot of the talk has been, I don't want to leave the Raiders, but it's gonna be quite funny to watch that situation, to say the least. And
but that's sort of where I'm at with Pittsburgh and the free agents and what sort of moves they're going to have to make. We'll talk a little bit more about the combine and what I think for the draft coming up. But you and your Bears, you guys have got $80 million in cap space, so you guys are big spenders at free agency if you want to be. There's a lot of guys out there, and you guys could bring in anybody you want. You could go get a Mike Evans and still have tons of cap space. You could go and shore up your defense, bring in someone like a Chase Young or whatever you want. You can sign virtually anybody. Who are you looking at for your Bears to bring in?
So you mentioned a guy like Mike Evans. He did get told, it was late last night, that he is not going to be re-signing back with Tampa. They are officially moving on. And so he has also stated that he does not want to play with a rookie quarterback. So I never really thought about Mike Evans much from the wide receiver standpoint. I'm looking at this going, you know what, if we're going to bring in a wide receiver, I want him to be a younger guy like a Michael Pittman, or a drafted guy to really be that number 2 to DJ Moore, and then also bringing in like a number 3 who's you're not going to have to pay a ton to. And when it comes to a wide receiver, I feel like a guy like Curtis Samuel would be a decent guy to bring in as a number 3. He's very experienced in the league. He played with DJ Moore in Carolina, so they have some familiarity there. Give him a 2-year, $15 million type deal. This is one of those things where he's going to be a very solid guy as your number 3. Obviously, you need to get that number 2 to make this very worth it. I do not view Curtis Samuels as a number 2, but if he comes in and he's your 3rd wide receiver on the depth chart, you're probably pretty happy with that. He's proven that he is a reliable receiver in the NFL. And again, with that experience with DJ Moore, they have some familiarity there, and you just need to get better all around in that pass catching game, just because you had DJ Moore and then you had who else last year? You bring in Curtis Samuels. If you don't bring in anyone else, you're like, okay, we have DJ Moore, but we also have Curtis Samuels, and then it's like we just kind of hope some of the guys like we've drafted over the years, like Tyler Scott, where it's like we just want you to try to get better over this time. So that's
still
type.
Have Cole Kmet too.
I'm getting to that. Cole Kmet, great pass catching tight end. He established himself as a top 10 tight end in the NFL this year. You know, he has phenomenal body control. He is pretty good at being a blocker as well. He is one of your guys where you look at him and go, you're gonna expect him to get 500 to 600 yards receiving every year, probably 7 to 8 receiving touchdowns per season, and he's gonna be pretty decent linebacker or blocker for the run game or the pass game if you're going to utilize him there. He's not special athletically. Like, he's not going to absolutely run away from you or anything like that. But yeah, the Bears, they need a second tight end, man, because it can't just be Cole Kmet. When Cole Kmet got injured last year, it was like the entire offense really went to shit because he was kind of that engine that got things going. And with Shane Waldron coming over from Seattle, they have a tight end that's up for free agency in Noah Fant that I look at and go, this is a former first round pick. This is a former, I think he was a top 20 pick in the NFL draft. He's very, very talented. He knows Shane Waldron's offense because he played it the last 3 years, or at least the last 2 years in Seattle. And I think he's going to be one of those guys that's going to play alongside Cole Kmet. He's definitely going to be behind Cole Kmet in that offense, and you're just going to start to open up. You're going to be able to do a lot more two tight end sets with guys like DJ Moore and whoever else can be out there on the corners and just really start to move that type of way. I like that because Fant is an athletic freak. That's one of the things that he was coming out of Iowa back a handful of years ago. And so I think for the Bears, trying to add a guy like that, he's probably not going to be too terribly expensive because, you know, he's been kind of one of those guys where he's been a little bit more boom or bust at times throughout the NFL, but he's been very reliable at Seattle with Shane Waldron, and this is one of those moves where it's definitely familiarity coming to a team. It's like, okay, every time you see an offensive coordinator go to a team, the former team, you'll often see a player come. Same thing with like a head coach or like an offensive coordinator or a defensive coordinator getting a head coaching job at a different team. It's like, okay, I'm going to bring in this guy because I know him. He likes me. We know what we can do together. So that's where Noah Fant kind of comes in. The biggest need for the Bears this offseason is center. The center position, pretty much since Olin Kreutz retired as a Chicago Bear, it's just kind of been this rolling, revolving door of just like, okay, it's this guy. You know, we've only had one player go to the Pro Bowl at that position. That was Cody Whitehair in his rookie season when he's wasn't even really a center. It was just like, okay, he's really good at blocking. And, you know, as a rookie, it was impressive what he did because he wasn't supposed to be a center. So that was one of the reasons. I have them going big here and them taking Connor Williams, the center out from Miami. Miami can't afford him. He's going to be available. I view Connor Williams as the best center in the draft. He is going to, or not best center in the draft, he's the best center available. I don't think he's going to be much more than a top 15 center, but with how bad the Bears center play has been over these last couple years, I'll take top 15. I just need consistency because the Bears these last 5 years have genuinely been in the bottom 10 or bottom 5 for center play, and trying to get up there. He is coming off of an ACL tear from week 14, so there is going to be that injury factor, which I think is also going to be a benefit for the Bears because they're probably going to be able to get him cheaper. I still think the Bears should draft a center in the draft at some point this year because, for instance, let's say Tevin Jenkins goes down with an injury. Connor Williams can easily just transition to guard, which he's played for with the Cowboys. And yeah, so Connor Williams, trying to bring him in. Again, dealing with that injury, so I think he's probably going to be cheaper than, you know, what he necessarily should, just because teams are going to be worried about that. Defensive side of the ball, I'm going to move here before I go to my last pick. You got to go after an edge rusher with alongside Montez Sweat, and I have them trying to bring in Bryce Huff, edge rusher from the Jets. This guy has been one of the most efficient pass rushers in terms of pass efficiency in the league the last 2 years. He's like, I'm pretty sure he was rated number 1 the last 2 seasons in terms of pass efficiency or pass rush efficiency in the NFL. And 26 years old, really, really good guy. The one problem is he was really only ever used in pass rushing situations. So, you're not going to want to pay that guy the, $100 million contract like you are with a Montez Sweat, where he can kind of do everything. He was definitely more used as a rotational type of edge rusher. He's okay against the run, but, for me, I'm just looking at it going, we just need to get more attack at the quarterback and rushing the quarterback. So if we have a guy like Bryce Huff who's going to come in on clear passing situations and get after the quarterback, and even if he's out there on the run and he's just a little bit of a liability, we still have TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds to help him out. So it's not like it's going to be that big of a worry. See him bringing in. And last player that I'm thinking about is Saquon Barkley. He's not going to be re-signed by the Giants. I like what we have in the running back position. I really, really like Roschon Johnson, but this is one of those moves where you're going to bring in a rookie quarterback. I want Caleb Williams to be super comfortable and to have a super strong running game. And if you bring in Barkley, well, guess what? You have one of the top runners in the league. You have a guy that can be an excellent pass catcher and just get the ball and do whatever he wants in space. But the best part about Saquon Barkley is he's going to be coming into a trio of Khalil Herbert, who has that kind of, just shifty movement and just kind of get around elusiveness. Then you also have Roschon Johnson, who's kind of been able to do everything, from the blocking, but he's going to be able to punch you in the mouth really aggressively. So he's going to be coming into a situation of where he's going to be in a really good tandem where he doesn't have to be out there every single play like what he essentially was for the Giants.
Yeah, he's not going to have to be that every down guy, that workhorse, which, as we've seen, he's had injury issues in the past. And, combining him with Khalil Herbert, that makes sense because Herbert's been having the same sort of issues the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, it's... I'm excited for it, and I'm really interested to see what the Bears are going to do with free agency, because obviously you need to sign Jalen Johnson. That's the biggest thing for this team here at the moment. I believe they are going to sign him. They've already sent him a contract that they think is really good. Now it's just Johnson just kind of ultimately, putting the name on the dotted line. And hopefully you don't have to use the franchise tag on him. I really don't want to have that, but they will, just so they can extend the contract talks. But yeah, so those are kind of the guys that I'm looking at from a free agent standpoint from the Bears.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I mean, even with all of those, you still land all those guys, you probably still have 35 to 45 million in cap space at that point. Yeah. And that would address, because I know you were saying you still need to find that number 2 wide receiver, and that's something that the Bears really need to address going forward. And who is that going to be? And
I think it's going to be a draft pick.
It could be, but I mean, the thing with the draft pick is it's still risky on whether or not they're going to be that great right away, unless the Bears somehow manage to move up and select like a Marvin Harrison Jr. or what's the other one I'm thinking of? Can't remember his name right now.
Malik Neighbors?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's really 3 wide receivers in this draft that you are looking at going like, these are guys that are going to be instant impact guys. That's going to be Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, or Rome Odunze. And Rome Odunze is kind of projected to go around that 9 spot with the Bears. And so if he is available at that spot, pairing him and Caleb Williams, he's already talked about it. And he goes, if I can be paired with Caleb Williams, that is a dream come true. Because they played against each other. He was at Washington, Caleb was at USC. It was like, I've been, me, I've been talking about that pairing for months now, just going like, this would be insane because it's so realistic that it could happen.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. But I mean, as we discussed, even if the Bears opt to go a different direction with that, there are a lot of super talented wide receivers that are coming up free agent this year that currently are sitting at number 1 or 2 on the depth chart where they play, and so could easily come into a Bears organization and would be like, okay, I understand DJ Moore is the number 1 guy. I have no problem with being number 2 to DJ Moore. I feel like, even, I know you said you weren't looking at him, but a guy like Mike Evans even would look at that and go, okay, I understand why DJ Moore is number 1 and I'm number 2. I get that.
Yeah, and he
Yeah.
talked about going like, oh, I don't want to play with a rookie quarterback. You know, you look at a guy like Caleb Williams, and you know you're going into an offense with a guy like DJ Moore. Like I could see Mike
Yeah,
Evans being like, okay, if you promise me you're drafting Caleb Williams, then yeah, I'll come in. But he still wants to be
exactly.
paid like a top end wide receiver, which is the only
Mhm.
thing that does kind of give me that little bit of worrisome of like, okay, like he
You're
wants
not going to
like
have to
$20
pay him.
million a year. I don't think that's going to happen, but even then I'm like, ah,
I mean, you're not going to have to give him a lot of years. He's not a young man anymore. So
no.
it's not like he's going to want a 6 or 7 year deal. He's
He's
probably looking at a 2 or 3 to close out his career. And honestly, looking like that would be feasible for the Bears. I do think the more likely landing spots for him, for me at least, are the Kansas City Chiefs and the Houston Texans. Those are the two spots. I know he said he didn't want a rookie, but hey, CJ Stroud won't be a rookie next year, and he really needs a number one guy.
Well,
And
yeah,
so I
I think
think
Nico
those are the
Collins
two
is a guy
spots.
that can build into that number one role. It's just Tank Dell, he was injured
Yep.
last year. He started to look really good, but adding Mike Evans to that team would just be like, okay, you got Nico Collins, Mike Evans, Tank Dell, and what we already saw from CJ Stroud last year, you're sitting back going
Mhm.
like, okay, shit. Um, there's too many good teams in the, AFC where if you're one of those teams that's kind of on the fringe, you're just kind of looking at it going, well, shit. What do we do?
Right. Yeah, I think a good fit for your Bears outside of that though would be either Michael Pittman Jr. or oh, why am I spacing on his name? Bengals wide receiver who's coming up.
Oh, T. Higgins. He's already
T.
franchise
Higgins.
tagged though, so
Oh, he did get
yeah,
tagged. Okay,
yeah.
okay.
He
Yeah,
got
then Michael
tagged pretty
Pittman
early.
Jr. would be an excellent addition as a number two for you guys. I know there's still talks that he may end up getting tagged by the Colts somehow.
Yeah, in one of the articles that I wrote, and I was literally just reading off my own article while doing
Yeah.
this, so it's not copyright. It's my article. Fuck you. It's my words. So I can basically just read off of it, and it's fine because I wrote it down. Uh, but yeah, like I even looked at that and I was like, if we can get Michael Pitt, if he's available, I believe Michael Pittman will be one of those guys that's kind of the top guy that they're going to go after. I still think they're going to go after a Roma Dunzen even if they do
Yeah.
get a Michael Pittman because having DJ Moore, Michael Pittman, and Roma Dunzen as your wide receiver trio, it's like, okay, everyone, this is Caleb Williams. He's a rookie. He's going to
Hmm.
throw for 45 passing touchdowns and 5,000 yards.
Right. Now, just for shits and giggles, say a guy like Brock Bowers falls to that 9 spot and Romo Duzin is still there. Which one would you prefer?
Um, this is kind of like one of those good doomsday scenarios because
Right.
saying good doomsday scenarios feels like a little bit of an oxymoron there, but yeah, I truly believe that you're likely gonna go with Roma Dunzen just because you do need that depth at wide receiver. I would love to see Brock Bowers come in. Like I've said this before. I have three guys that at pick number 9, if they are available, I want the Bears to take. Malik Neighbors is my number 1, Roma Dunzen is my number 2, and then Brock Bowers is my number 3 because you need to bring in another offensive playmaker to this team just because again you have DJ Moore, you have Cole Kmet, but you need something more than just that. And to pair Caleb Williams and Brock Bowers, that could essentially be like pairing Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce moving into the future if Brock Bowers pans out to be the guy that he's supposed to be. And nothing shows me that he can't be that guy.
No, I mean he's head and shoulders above any other tight end in this draft. Like there's Brock Bowers and then there's all the other tight ends in this draft.
Yeah,
And
it's
so it's
Brock
very
Bowers
clear.
and then who else? And then it's,
Yeah.
what's
I
your name?
mean, we saw some flashes yesterday from some of the other guys. Like they've definitely there's definitely some talent there,
the
but
the
there's
dude from
no
Texas
other
is going
top
to
10
be a
talent.
phenomenal guy. Like
Exactly.
this is kind of the similar year to where Pat Fryermuth was without a doubt the second best tight end in his draft class. It just so
Mhm.
happened to be that Kyle Pitts was also in that draft class where it was like, okay, Pat Fryermuth's a great fucking tight end.
Yep.
But he's going up against a guy that could be generational at the position. And that's kind of the same situation here this year, just with
Luckily for
Brock
me, the
Bowers.
Falcons have kind of wasted that generational talent, and up to this point, I would say Freiermuth is the better of the two tight ends statistic.
Statistically,
this point.
yeah,
Yeah.
without a doubt he has, because the joke is the last 2 years in fantasy football, you don't touch Kyle Pitts because you're just gonna get burned. It's like watching the Ferrari with someone like a 90-year-old grandma driving it, going like, I'm not gonna go faster than 30. It's like you're
Yeah.
driving a fucking Ferrari, so like that's essentially what Arthur Smith did with Kyle Pitts the last couple of years. Arthur Smith was driving a Bugatti and he's like, I'm gonna do the speed limit. It's like,
Yeah.
why?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Very true. No, it's gonna be fun to see what happens though. Because I'm still not even ruling out that your Bears could trade up. I could see it happening. You guys do have enough talent at some positions. Like if you do go out and you get like a Saquon Barkley, for example, you could then look at Roshan Johnson or Khalil Herbert, package that with the 9th pick, and go, hey, Patriots, do you want the 9th pick? We'll take the 3rd pick so we can get Marvin Harrison Jr.
yeah, I do think the Bears are going to end up trading up in the draft, but I don't think it's going to be 9 and up. I think it's going to be
No,
drafting or trading back up into the first round after those 2 picks, and I think they're definitely going to be targeting Jackson Powers Johnson because, again, the Bears need a center. He's one of those guys that just looks so good. And you and I were joking about it. It was either earlier in the podcast or before, where he walked into the Bears interview and the first thing he said, he goes, "Duh, Bears," and he's talking
Yeah.
about like wanting to play for this team. Like an interview at the podium, he was asked, "Do you want to go play in Chicago?" He's like, "Yeah, I would love that. I want to." So you have a guy that's clearly interested in coming to the team,
Mm-hmm.
and he's the top position at your most needed position of need. And so I'm like, yeah, let's like, if you are going to trade up to get him onto this team, I'm not going to say no to it. If you want to, like,
Yeah.
say for instance, you look at a team like Pittsburgh and say, hey, we'll give you, the second round and a third round to move up, and we'll give you a second round next year for
Yeah.
your first pick for the 20th overall pick for us to get Jackson Powers Johnson. I think both teams are going to say yeah.
Except for the fact that the Steelers are in desperate need of a center, so they'd be like, no, we kind of want actually. That's the only downside there. That the Steelers are a bad example for a trade there.
Yeah,
Any of the other teams around there, like maybe the Ravens or something like that, moving up in that spot.
If he's
But
still available
yeah,
at the Ravens pick, I could see that happening. But yeah,
yep. Because like ultimately for me looking at the Steelers, that I talked about how middle linebacker is the greatest need for the team. Beyond that, it's that O-line at center and right tackle. Right now, we don't have anybody in those positions. With the release of Mason Cole and Chukwuma Okorafor, we're now lacking at both of those spots. And so that is, I expect in the first round to
it's
see
going to be
the
one
Steelers,
of those 2 spots.
one of those 2 spots, because there aren't any linebackers available. The only other one is, as I mentioned earlier,
Cooper DeJean.
They've had a lot of meetings with Cooper DeJean.
They like the white chocolate, man. They like white chocolate.
Well, and I think they're looking at it going, if we can put him opposite Joey Porter Jr. and we've got Minkah Fitzpatrick back here, then really the strong safety position is the only thing we're sort of lacking at that point. And there's a lot of safeties in this draft as well that we could see them then pick in the 3rd, 4th round and fill out that secondary. And then all of a sudden, Pittsburgh becomes one of the best secondary units in the league to go along with arguably the best edge rushing duo in the league right now.
The only problem with that
on
is
what the Bears had.
The only problem that I have with the Steelers drafting Cooper DeJean is he's white. There's no good white corners. That's not possible.
Hey, there's a first time for everything, man.
I know. I'm making that solely as
Yep.
a joke of just we've never by
'Cause
default,
you know
if
what?
he gets drafted in the first round, he's without a doubt the greatest white corner to have ever existed because he was drafted in the first round.
A lot of people said the same thing about Christian McCaffrey when he came up. Like, yes, he was excellent. He was a phenomenal running back. But everybody said, a white running back, though, he's not going to make it in this league. It just won't last because you don't see it often. It's not something you see. And here we are. He's the best running back in the league, hands down. And so I don't think that would be the best move for Pittsburgh to make. But if they're sitting at 20 and other teams have already reached and taken all the centers and all the tackles that would be worth it, and they're like, well, now we're reaching into the second and the third round to get our center and our right tackle, let's move up and get Cooper. That's the only way I see that really happening, because it's not a position in need. We do still have Patrick Peterson. We do still have Levi Wallace on the team. We've got a solid 1, 2, 3 at the cornerback position, in my opinion. We don't need Cooper DeJean.
Do you think Cooper DeJean is going to run to the sideline like that meme of just that's how a white man runs a football, but the difference is he's gonna run by that's how a white man covers a football?
Yeah, maybe. He might break the rookie interception record for cornerback. You never know. If he's paired with wherever he goes, if he's paired with a shutdown guy, he goes to the Jets, for example. Nobody's throwing it at Sauce. And so all the passes are coming his way, and he has the opportunity to make some big plays. He goes to the Bears. I know you guys don't really have any interest, but just as an example,
pairing him with Jalen Johnson, and that would be huge, right? For sure.
Exactly, and same thing with the Steelers. Joey Porter Jr. showed he can be that shutdown guy. He only got burned by one receiver last year, and so there's opportunities for him. I'm not going to write him off just because he's a white cornerback. I'm interested to see what he can
do. I'm just making the jokes. I'm making the memes.
I know. But yeah, ultimately for me, I think the Steelers with that first round pick, they've got to keep working on that offensive line. We got Broderick Jones last year. Excellent pickup. We still have Isaac Swamalo and James Daniels under contract at the left and right guard respectively. It's that center and right tackle position. And when you've got such a solid run game like we have, right tackle is so key. We need to find a tackle that can play on that right side and throw some big run blocks for Najee Harris. Let's get him over 1,000 yards again. Hell, he's had 3 straight over 1,000-yard seasons. He's got Arthur Smith as an OC now. Let's get Najee Harris 2,000 yards this year. Come on, let's get a right tackle. Let's find a center that can fit in that role and just be a good stay-at-home, solid guy. That's my hope for the Steelers this year is, we got to shore up that O-line with this first overall pick. This first round pick, sorry, at number 20. Maybe they trade up again. Maybe they look at the Patriots and go, hey, we made a good deal last year. If the Patriots end up moving down, who says they won't move down a second?
Well, the Patriots have gone out and said that they're going to choose a quarterback at pick number 3. They have strictly come out and said that. So,
I mean, if somebody offers them the right package, I could see
move from 3 to 20 though. I think you're going to have to give up all.
Yeah, it wouldn't be immediately 3 to 20. I'm saying it would be 3 to 8 or 10 or 11 or something, and pick up some extra picks. And then moving again to pick up even more picks. Because there are a lot of quarterbacks in this draft. Mm-hmm. And there are some decent quarterbacks available in free agency as well. And so the Patriots have options since they are in such a drastic rebuild right now. We've talked about it. Draft capital is key. Mm-hmm. And so I could see with the right offer, they go, okay, well, yeah, we really want to get Jaden Daniels, but we have nothing for him. So why wouldn't we move back, bring in, a Baker Mayfield or something for an example? I don't know if he's still available, but I'm just using it as an example. Bring in someone like that, bring Jimmy Garoppolo back. There's options for the Patriots if they are able to build their draft capital up so that they've got multiple firsts over the next couple of seasons. That would be
It would be a very good move. And I know they have talked about bringing in a veteran quarterback. And funny enough, it was Mr. Comeback Player of the Year who was being the leading man, Joe Flacco being the guy.
Yep. You never know, man. There are options out there for the Patriots. That's why them coming out and saying they're taking a quarterback at 3, yes, they should. They need a quarterback. But if a team comes at you and offers you enough and you go, well, even with a rookie quarterback, we're not making the playoffs. So why start right away? Why not just wait? There's going to be quarterbacks next year. What are we 3 years out from Arch Manning?
Technically 2, because
2 and
because
right and
well,
so,
yeah. So 2
like
years.
You're in a division right now where it's for the next couple seasons. That division is going to be run by the Dolphins and the Bills, and so the Patriots looking at that going like, I think it would be wise of them if they get the right offer to trade down and increase their draft capital. Sure, there's a bit of selfishness in there, me going, Jaden Daniels falls far enough that the Steelers can get him. I doubt it. I think the only quarterback the Steelers will take in this draft, if he falls far enough, is J.J. McCarthy. I could see if there's not anything else there for them at 20, or if he even somehow falls to the second round. I don't think that's going to happen.
He's not even going to fall to 20.
We've seen crazier things. We talked a couple years ago when Kenny Pickett got taken at 22. Like, there were supposed to be 4 quarterbacks taken in that first round.
No,
Pickett ended up being the only one. Yeah, there was. Before the draft, there were 4 quarterbacks that were talked about going in the first round.
But the difference
I know
this
there wasn't
year,
enough talent, but
the difference this year with JJ is that
Yeah.
he is going top 15. There, like he isn't like
He should.
you need to remember is that there's teams that the Vikings, the Broncos, then the Raiders. They all have picks back to back to back. They all need quarterbacks. They've all talked about moving up for a quarterback. They've all liked JJ. There's no way he's getting past that point.
No, I don't think there is either. All I'm saying is we've seen crazier things in past drafts. We've had teams say those exact same things. Oh, we need a quarterback. Oh, we're going to trade up for, and then they don't. We've seen it time and time again. We've said it about the Saints for the last 3 seasons. They're always like, oh, we're going to trade up for. Then they do trade up. And we're like, oh, okay, here they're going to take the quarterback, and then they don't.
Yeah, no, I get it, but it's just that with the expectation of a JJ even potentially being there.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, because we've seen crazy things happen in the draft,
you can't rule it out of a
possibility for him to drop to 20. You never know what can happen. We see at the combine and at the pro days all the time where somebody comes in and they're just lights out and a team falls in love, and it's a team that's like, oh, well, we were going to take this quarterback, but we can't pass up on this guy. He fits our system perfect, and it happens all the time. And so yes, it's speculation. Yes, it's wishful thinking, but crazy things happen in the NFL draft.
This is true.
We've seen guys that were like, they have no right falling to the second or the third or the fourth round, and then they do. It happens.
I would say
every year.
It's more realistic that the Steelers trade up to 8 to get a guy like a JJ McCarthy than, for instance, that he falls. But I know what you're saying. Crazy stuff happens.
That's all I'm saying. There's no way they trade up for a quarterback.
Yeah.
That ultimately that's what it is. If they take a quarterback at 20, it's because somebody phenomenal that they love fell that far, and there's no position of need available. He fell that far because all the tackles and the centers went early instead. Things like that, and we see it every year. Shit like that happens, and it blows our mind. Neither of us last year expected the Texans to make the moves they did
to get Will Levis.
CJ...
Oh no, Texans. I thought you said Titans for a second. Yeah.
No, the Texans to take CJ Stroud and Will Anderson Jr. Nobody expected that to happen. Like, crazy shit happens in the drafts the last 5-6 years. We see miraculous, bizarre shit go down. And I expect something this year. I'm sure we'll see something wild happen where somebody that was projected to go in the top 10 or 15 falls all the way out into the second round or the third round or something crazy. Yeah.
So I'm just watching the combine as I have it on the background. The quarterbacks are now running their 40-yard dashes, and I'm pretty sure Sam Hartman, the quarterback from Notre Dame, like he ran it twice back to back. Jesus Christ, that's a good looking dude.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen him, take a look. But yeah, it was funny because it seemed like he was the only quarterback running a 40-yard dash. Javon Baker from UCF is the only other quarterback I've seen run it. He just ran a 4.54. This is just instant reporting coming at you, but yeah, like I want to say this about the quarterbacks in the combine, since we're kind of already on this train. I think the combine is a useful thing to have, with the exception of one position, and that's quarterbacks.
Okay.
Because every single year, you look at a quarterback in the draft or in the combine, they just light it up. And you're like, oh my God, look at this guy. And then people are just instantly going to just come out of nowhere and be like, oh, this guy's a top 5 quarterback. Like we saw it a few years ago with Malik Willis, where he lit
Hmm.
up the combine. He was phenomenal, and people are like, he's gonna go top 5. And like you're listening to like the draft guys just sitting back going like, what meth are you on right now? Like, what are we talking about here? Saying that he can go top 5, and then he falls to like the 3rd round. Everyone's like, this is just the biggest steal ever. It's like, did you watch him play at Liberty at all? No, you don't need to watch him play games. We just need to see what he does in the pajamas. It's like, no, maybe watch him play at Liberty before making a hasty decision. And I tweeted this out a few days ago, where I said Michael Penix Jr., there's going to be a lot of people that are going to come out of nowhere and be like, oh, I said Michael Penix Jr. was always a first round pick, because he's going to light it up at the combine. I think he's going to have
Hmm.
himself a very, very strong combine, and people are going to get fooled by that. And they're going to see the numbers that he put up at college, at Washington, and go, oh, yeah, he's like a top 10 guy for sure. And it's like, no, stop it, slap, down, bad.
And yeah, for us, and for most analysts, we see through that. But we both know there are some wild, just brain dead GMs and ownership groups out there that also drink this Kool-Aid. And so
Yep.
that just re-ups my point of, sometimes guys who don't perform as well in the combine suddenly start to slip when we're like, no, they should still be a top 15 guy just because they didn't throw the ball well, as you said, in pajamas. Like it's crazy to me, but that's almost why I like the combine and the pro day stuff, because my team so consistently picks in the latter half of the first round of the draft rounds. Sometimes we see some of those guys that don't perform as well when it's just like, it's just, pitch and catch essentially. So they're not going all out with it. And then you look at the tape and you go, okay, but he got something special that we don't see in drills. And so then they fall farther, and so that's why I like it, because then the crazy guys going, yeah, we're gonna take the Michael Penix Jr. or the Bo Nix over the JJ McCarthy because he did so well in the combine. Like,
I would
no,
die
please do.
laughing. I would love to see Minnesota draft Michael Penix, just because he like my draft evaluation. Let me pull, because like I have this written down here.
Mhm.
So Michael Penix Jr. Pretty much what I have written down from him is that he has a smoking arm. Like the ball coming off of his hand is very, very good. Pocket passer that can't do really much other than that. If he's in the pocket, he's good. The second that it starts to break down, he is not so good.
Yep.
If this was the NFL 15 years ago, he'd be the first quarterback taken. Because 15 years ago, it was pretty much, I want to see you in the pocket and I don't ever want to see you leave. He's that guy. But unfortunately, like
Mhm.
we talked about earlier, that's not the NFL today. You've got to be able to move. You've got to be able to beat guys with your legs. And Michael Penix Jr., time and time again, I saw him miss throws that he should be making. And
Yep. But again, and as you pointed out, it's things like the combine that muddy those waters, because these guys are in there, they're running these drills without guys in their face. You know, nobody's coming at them swiping at the ball.
You don't
and
have
things like
TJ Watt coming after you like a pissed off redneck.
that. Exactly. You don't have those concerns. And so it's much more comfortable and easy to be confident and make those big plays. But we do. We see it every year at not just the quarterback, but other positions where, you know, like even the wide receiver, some of these guys, and they're so lightning quick. And it's like, oh, damn, this guy is going to be really good. But it's like, okay, but
Can he catch
how
the
does
football?
he react when he gets 2 yards off the line and runs into a body and then has to change direction and hit that speed again? Is it still the same? And it isn't always the same. But because they can run uninhibited, teams look at it and go, oh, yeah, this guy's going to be great.
Yeah,
And
you remember everyone with John Ross when he ran the 4.22. It's like, he's going to be the greatest thing ever. And it's like, can he run routes?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, but he ran the 4.42 or the 4.22.
Yep.
It's like, okay, that's great. That's awesome.
Yep.
Can he run routes? This isn't Madden.
Can he turn? Can he turn at all? You know, like, great, he can run in a straight line really, really fast. That doesn't do us any good if he can't even turn around and catch the ball on a streak run.
This isn't Madden where I can pick up a guy who ran the fastest 40-yard dash, and, you know, sure, his catching is a D grade, but yeah, I can make that work because it's Madden, and logic doesn't work in Madden.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, but that's why I love the combine, because it creates this sense of illusion for some of the guys who treat it like gospel.
Yeah.
You know, some of these GMs, they do. The combine is gospel to them, and they're like, okay, whoever performs best in the combine is clearly the best at that position.
We look at Al Davis for years where it was like, I want the fastest guy possible. And it's like, why did you draft this guy that was rated by most scouts and GMs in the 5th round? He was fast. Like he would have loved Henry Ruggs. If he would have saw Henry Ruggs at the combine, he would have been like, sure, we don't care if he, you know, accidentally murdered someone in drunk driving. We'll get him off. Like that's the type of thing that Al Davis liked to do because he was a fucking nutcase.
Isn't that what Al Davis did with Ruggs?
Al Davis was dead.
Oh, yeah, no, it was. Well, who's running the Raiders now?
Mark Davis, his son.
Marcus. Yeah, it's the same thing. That's why I was confused, because it's the same thing. He did the exact same thing with Ruggs.
Well, like with Al Davis, he was like the general manager during that time, so like he would be making the picks. Mark Davis is the guy. He's just like, I have a really silly haircut, and I'm going to hire people that I think know what they're doing, but, you know, I'm going to fire them, you know, when they're, you know, idiots.
Well, and we know Mark Davis likes to poke his nose in the draft process as well, though. You know, he's been the final decision. He's kind of like a Jerry Jones in that way, where
not really.
Yeah, he's no
like the last couple of years, not really. Like, I know he hired he was the guy that was on the NFL Network for years and years and years. Before DJ, kind of the draft analyst. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name because he was one of the guys that got me into scouting. But yeah, they hired him. Then they hired the guy from New England who brought in McDaniels, who was dog shit, and they were both terrible. And now they have Tom Telesco, the former GM for the Chargers. So like they're like Mark Davis, I will say about him, he goes out and tries to find guys that are more football savvy because he's a business guy. Like that's all Mark Davis was. He went to school for business and that type of stuff. It just so happens that his dad owned a football team, and it was like, here you go, son. But yeah,
fair enough.
Yeah, well, I don't have anything more. I don't know about yourself.
No, the only other thing I kind of wanted to touch on is I can't remember their names, but there were a couple of guys so far in the combine process here that I really, really hope their draft stock falls. There was one who is a flat earther. Doesn't believe in planets, doesn't believe in space. I feel like that should affect your draft stock. I kind of hope he doesn't get drafted at all. We don't need morons like that making millions of dollars a year. And then the other one yesterday said that he doesn't think birds are real and that they're government drones and power lines are where they land to power them. And I'm sorry, but that too, your draft stock should fall so far that you do not get to be on an NFL team if you believe these things. Like, the American education system is failing so hard when you are producing flat earthers and conspiracy theorists that believe birds aren't real. Like, I believe you should believe some conspiracy theory. Like, yeah, the government is not batting 1,000. They're not there are conspiracy theories. But when there is scientific fact to back up the truth, shut your damn mouth.
So the flat earther is Tyler Owens from Texas Tech, and the guy who doesn't believe birds are real is Romo Dunzen. Fuck you. I don't care if he thinks birds aren't real. I'm still taking him. He can come to Chicago.
Yeah, and I hope a bird shits in his mouth.
Sure. If he doesn't think birds are real, I'm just like, yeah, sure, you deal with that over there. You're too good at the football. You know, come play with Caleb Williams and try to spread your conspiracies. Actually, leave the conspiracies at home.
Yeah.
Believe birds aren't.
There's the problem. It's those guys that are always spreading those damn conspiracies. He will not be good in your locker room. Take Brock Bowers instead. Forget that. Sign Michael Pittman Jr. Do not take Romo Dunzen, because that is just next level. Like, if we could still get away with using the R word, like that, those guys definitely fall into that category. Like, that is just ridiculous.
When I heard Romo Dunzen talk about that, I just started laughing because I immediately thought to myself, I was like, oh no, you're a fucking nutcase.
Yeah, he is. We don't need any more Antonio. Like, you don't even have CTE. What's your excuse? Like, why are you this dumb when you haven't been hit in the head yet? Like, holy crap.
I'm still taking Rome. I am.
Yeah.
Like if it was the flat Earth, I would be like, okay, that's probably a pretty big red flag. Doesn't believe birds exist. I've heard crazier conspiracy theories that guys believe in the NFL. You know, birds.
That's just my hot take on that. It's like, when you have takes like that, when you're so far gone that you don't even believe what's real, essentially, you should not even be in consideration to be able to make millions of dollars to play a game.
I don't know about those birds, Sterling. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, you're not gonna make millions of dollars playing a game, so I'm not worried about that.
I'm just gonna be paid money to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Try to say that live on the air at any big network job you get, and say birds aren't real, and see how quickly they go, this isn't Fox. We have to fire him.
What are you talking about? Skip Bayless. Skip Bayless still has a job. Oh, a thing that I saw this week, Skip Bayless's TV show had a record low of 50,000 viewers for their Wednesday show, and the show that his partner for years, Shannon Sharp, was on that same day had over like 500,000, and everyone's like, wow, and I'm like, yeah, because no one liked fucking Skip Bayless. The only people that actually watched for Skip Bayless is just like the crazy Fox people. They're just like, yeah, I agree with Skip.
Yep, exactly.
Well, we're definitely starting to walk into the territory of our OneIQ podcast.
I had to bring those two up though, man, because that just blew my mind. I was like, no, how did you even get accepted to a university believing these things? Shame on those universities.
Shame on Texas Tech and Washington.
Yes, shame. Yeah, you're letting flat earthers and people who believe birds are robots. Like, fuck.
Well, that's a perfect time to end it. Thank you all very much for joining us here. Thank you for watching our conspiracy theory podcast, aka OneIQ Football. For Sterling, I'm Brendan saying peace.